In this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on ChatGPT, AI, how it's disrupting major industries including e-commerce, and what you can do to take advantage of this tech and not go obsolete. So by now, you've all probably heard about ChatGPT. And in case you haven't, ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence chatbot developed by OpenAI. Now, if you're anything like my wife, you're probably skeptical. But after playing with it for the past week, I can say that ChatGPT is going to disrupt major industries and possibly even upend Google in the coming years. Now, here are just some practical applications that I've tried using it for this past week. So first off, ChatGPT puts out amazingly well-written content. I recently used it to draft an email for my autoresponder sequence for Bumblebee Linens, and here's what I asked it to do. I told it to write a brand story for my e-commerce store, which is an online store that sells handkerchiefs and linens. And then I told it to mention that we started it because my wife cries a lot, couldn't find high quality hankies for our wedding anywhere, and our value props are that you can add monograms and personal messages. We had the largest selection, and we embroider on everything in-house in the USA. So I just put all that into ChatGPT. It took me a couple of iterations of me telling the robot, write in the first person, make it more heartfelt, make the language more casual, and this is what it came up with. Hi, my name is Jennifer, the owner of Bumblebee Linens, and I started this store out of my passion for creating meaningful keepsakes and gifts. Now, the original idea behind Bumblebee Linens began when I was engaged to be married. Now, I'm the type of gal who cries all the time, so I wanted something to dry my tears of joy at the altar. As a young bride-to-be, I spent countless hours searching for the perfect hankies for my own wedding, but no matter where I looked, I just couldn't find anything that met my high standards for quality and design. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands and create my own collection of hankies. I poured my heart and soul into sourcing each one, using the best fabrics and the most intricate embroidery techniques. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to share my passion for beautiful linens with others. I invite you to visit Bumblebee Linens and discover the beauty and significance of these special items for yourself. Pretty amazing, right? ChatGPT can even write code. I recently was writing code for my website, and I had this weird compilation error where it wasn't obvious what the problem was. So I cut and pasted the code into ChatGPT, asked for what was wrong, and it told me the answer. And in fact, you can use ChatGPT to write code for yourself. I had it code up something quick and dirty that would make images spin on my website, and it put out code that worked. In fact, I saw a video where a programmer had used ChatGPT to write code to track faces on video. This is nothing short of amazing. So now that you have an idea of what ChatGPT can do, let's talk about the implications and why it's going to disrupt major industries. Right now, freelance writers are up in arms because ChatGPT does a pretty good job of writing articles. Why pay 10 to 25 cents per word when you can have a robot write that post for you? Here are some of the nefarious ways that ChatGPT is being used right now in the content space. Some people are taking an existing blog post written by a human, copying and pasting it into ChatGPT, and simply asking it to rewrite the article in a different tone. So for example, you could take a New York Times post, ask ChatGPT to break it down into bullet points, and then ask it to generate an entire article covering those exact points in an authoritative tone. This actually works surprisingly well. Now, is this plagiarism? Now, it's definitely a gray area, but you can see why authors are furious over this. It's only a matter of time before the web becomes cluttered with regurgitated junk. In fact, it already is, and Google has put out a statement saying that all AI content will be penalized. Now, artists all over the world are angry too because AI-generated images are being generated from the same techniques that were invented by human artists. Recently, someone submitted an AI-generated piece of art that actually won an art contest. Now, is AI-generated art plagiarism since it mimics techniques that were invented by humans? That's another gray area. This past week, I used ChatGPT to write jokes, write scripts for certain sections of my YouTube videos. I even had it draft a heartfelt note to my wife just as an experiment. Now, it takes a while to get it right, but the AI eventually outputs something that is pretty darn good. Now, what's scary is that you can have it create content in the style of someone else. So for example, you can ask it to write a joke about math in the style of Louis C.K., and it does a pretty damn good job. Now, in terms of writing code, millions of people have been uploading code snippets and answering questions on the popular tech site Stack Overflow, which has literally flooded the site with regurgitated junk. Now, are the lives of creators, artists, and software engineers in trouble of becoming obsolete? Well, the answer is yes and no. So first off, AI is still a ways from replacing humans. The content that it spits out is often inaccurate. So for example, in a post on strategery.com, the author actually used ChatGPT for fun to help his daughter with her term paper on Thomas Hobbes. Now, even though the essay created by ChatGPT was well written and in an authoritative tone, it was actually completely wrong. Now, incidentally, education is where I'm really scared about ChatGPT the most right now. What if every single kid starts using ChatGPT to write essays and term papers? It is literally going to make our next generation incapable of thinking for themselves, but I digress. Now, let's fast forward 5 years when this technology becomes a lot better and more accurate. Are we all destined to become couch potatoes with screens over our eyes and hanging out in the metaverse? Now, to give you my point of view, I want to tell you a couple stories based on my own experiences. Now, in the early part of my career, I was an electrical engineer in the Silicon Valley. And during the early part of the 21st century, there was actually a huge movement towards outsourcing engineering work to India, where you could literally save between 5 and 10x on your costs. Now, slowly but surely, companies in the Silicon Valley started moving their entire teams to India. Now, at my company, when I was working there, we actually nearly stopped hiring people in the US and focused our efforts in building a team in Pune, India. Now, people in my company at the time were terrified that we'd all be outsourced to cheaper labor overseas. But to be honest with you guys, I was actually never worried about getting outsourced, and here is why. Even though the engineers in India could do some of the work that I was doing, I had the knowledge and the relationships in my company to get things done far faster than anyone in India. Now, in the engineering world, it's rare that you can lock yourself in a room and code and develop in silence. To get things done, you often have to communicate with your peers, work together, and it's often a game of give and take. So I'll say something like, hey man, I'll get this done for you quickly, but I need you to do this for me. Plus, because I was at the headquarters, I could move much quicker than anyone in India. And furthermore, and this is not to brag, but I simply put out better work, not necessarily because I was smarter, but because the communication was a lot better. When I started my e-commerce store, Bumblebee Linens, back in 2007, it was extremely difficult to start an online store. There was no Shopify, no BigCommerce, no Amazon, and if you wanted to shop, you had to jump through hoops, be familiar with code to a certain extent, and integrate all of your own apps. Now today, companies like Shopify and Amazon make it way easier to get started. And today, you'll find hundreds of thousands of independent shops selling random things online. Sellers from China routinely copy and rip off products and sell them at lower prices, and there's rampant competition. Now, I've even had people start sites like Hummingbird Linens and knocked off our site completely. But am I worried about the competition? Well, the answer is yes to a certain extent, but I have confidence that I can adjust quickly and be a step ahead of the competition. After all, I have a couple of things that my competitors do not. I have a strong following and a solid customer list to market to, people who are loyal to the brand. So what's the point in me telling you all this? After all, outsourcing engineers to India and Chinese knocking off products isn't exactly like AI, but it's actually pretty close. The key point is that we are all humans, and AI can't take that away. As humans, we all need to connect with one another. Now, at my day job as an engineering director, I wasn't worried about getting replaced because I developed real human relationships with the people at the company. I had the necessary people skills to get things done far faster than an employee tens of thousands of miles away. Even if the engineering staff over there could code better than me, which was possibly the case, they would never ever be able to replace the human aspects of my job. Now, how do you get a whole bunch of disparate groups in the company of engineers to work together? You gotta take them out to eat, you gotta do them favors, you gotta get them to like you and kind of grease the wheels. In terms of e-commerce, it's extremely difficult to replace your brand and the community that you've created. So for example, the other day, I was looking to buy a wireless microphone. Now, am I gonna buy the cheap Chinese knockoff that is half the price, or am I gonna go with a Rode or a Sennheiser? I literally spent 2x the cost to get the Rode. Now, overall, ChatGPT is gonna disrupt people who are either not that great at their work to begin with, or people who aren't making connections with real people. Now, my buddy Jim Wang recently introduced me to the blog strategery.com, which is a blog that I highly recommend that everyone check out. Now, if you read these articles, you'll realize that there's no way in a million years that an AI robot will be able to replace this guy's writing. Now, for me, I think I'm gonna be okay, not necessarily because my content is better than anyone else's in particular, but because of the real relationships that I developed over the years with all of you who are listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video. Now, everyone who I personally met at the Seller Summit or at every event that I've ever attended will continue to follow me because of our mutual connection. So whether you are a coder, a writer, or a podcaster, it doesn't really matter what you do. You are a human with connections. Even if AI were to copy you, they can't copy the community that you've built up over time. So how do you compete with AI as an e-commerce store owner or a content creator? Number one, establish real human connections with your audience. If you run an e-commerce store, take phone calls, provide great customer service, put out videos, TikToks, and blog posts to get people to follow you. Video is probably the best medium of the three. Two, don't hide behind your computer all day. I've been guilty of this in the past. Actually go out and talk to people. Build a community. Recently, I've started going down my phone book and randomly texting people to reconnect. Take Zoom calls with people who follow you. Create a group, a Discord, or a forum where people can hang out and chat. So bottom line, in order to succeed in the AI world, you have to leverage your strengths as a human. Since humans are the ones programming the bots, you'll technically always be one step ahead, and you must adapt to the circumstances as they change. Now, I started out as a blogger, but my journey has revolved into podcasting and YouTubing because I feel like those mediums are better for establishing human connections with others. In the world of e-commerce, I focus all my efforts on building an email and an SMS list. Your customer data is the lifeblood and the secret to longevity for any business. Selling on Amazon, if you guys are selling on Amazon out there, it's just a short-term fix and just a place to generate cash flow. In fact, the best comparison that I can think of for AI is how Amazon has disrupted e-commerce over the years. So focus on being a real person and you'll never go obsolete. By the way, this entire episode was written by AI. I'm just kidding. Anyway, now that you know what you need to know to stay ahead, make sure you watch this video on the rules that I live by to get rich and build wealth.